I've seen the same thing happen over and over. People go for the cheap, surface mount sub that looks good in the catalog, only to find a thin, rattly boom that never really fills the room. The disappointment comes fast, and the regret sticks around longer than the warranty. That's why I wanted to start today by asking, does a higher-priced, in-wall option actually save you from that buyer's remorse? Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The Focal F100IWSUB8 is the kind of product that sits in that middle ground where you're willing to spend more, but you still need reassurance that the extra cost translates into real-world benefit. It's not an active sub with its own built-in amplifier, it's a passive, Bass-Reflex design that leans on an external amp, specifically the Focal F100IWSUB8. That fact alone changes the conversation from how loud can it get, to how well does it integrate with the rest of my system. If you've ever tried to slap a cheap passive sub into a home theater and ended up with a muffled thud, you'll appreciate that this isn't a plug-and-play toy. First, let's talk about the category itself. In-wall subwoofers promise the ultimate in discretion: no box taking up floor space, no visible cables, just a clean wall and a hidden bass source. The trade-off is the installation. You need to cut a hole, mount the speaker on studs, and make sure the cabinet depth fits the cavity without compromising structural integrity. The F100IWSUB8 advertises a low-depth design that fits 16-inch OC studs, which is a genuine practical advantage if your wall cavity is tight. It means you can drop a 12-inch driver into a space that would normally require a bulkier enclosure, keeping the wall's surface relatively untouched. The low cut frequency sits at 30 Hz, which is about where most home theater subwoofers start to become audible to the average listener. In everyday terms, that translates to a solid rumble that you can feel when a low-frequency explosion hits on a movie, or the depth you get from a bass guitar line in a live concert recording. Because it's a Bass-Reflex model, the port tuning helps maintain that low end without needing an oversized driver. The result is a tighter, more controlled bass that stays glued to the walls instead of booming out of the room like a cheap sealed box would. Now, the practical side of pairing a passive sub with an amp. The nominal 8 ohm impedance is pretty standard, but you do need to feed it with an amplifier that can handle the power demands without clipping. Focal's own F100IWSUB8 is engineered for exactly this driver, delivering enough headroom to keep the cone moving cleanly even during demanding passages. If you already own a Focal power amp, you're in a sweet spot. If not, you'll have to budget for an amp that can deliver at least 150200 watts RMS into 8 ohms, otherwise the sub will feel underdriven and the low-cut edge will become a wobble rather than a punch. One of the hidden trade-offs that often trips new buyers is the need for proper acoustic sealing around the port. Since the sub is in wall, any gaps around the mounting frame can introduce unwanted resonance or air leaks that muddy the bass response. In practice, you'll want to use acoustic sealant and possibly a custom trim piece to keep the port airflow clean. The F100IWSUB8's mounting kit includes a gasket, but the quality of the installation will heavily influence the final sound. If you're comfortable with basic carpentry and willing to spend a couple of hours on the wall, the payoff is a clean, invisible bass source. If you're looking for a plug-and-play solution, the hidden work may feel like a deal-breaker. Let's get into who actually benefits from this sub. If you're building a dedicated home theater room or a high-fidelity listening space where aesthetics matter as much as the sound, the F100IWSUB8 makes sense. Its discreet profile keeps the visual clutter to a minimum, and the ability to mount it low on the wall can improve bass integration with floor-standing speakers or in ceiling surrounds. Audiophiles who already own a Focal power amp will appreciate the synergy. The brand's drivers and amplifiers are tuned to work together, which can shave off that extra layer of guesswork when matching components. On the flip side, the sub isn't a good fit for a casual renter who can't or doesn't want to cut into drywall. It also isn't ideal for someone who primarily listens to music at low volumes. The deep rumble that shines at higher playback levels may feel excessive when the volume is turned down. And if you're on a tight budget, the combined cost of the sub and a suitable amp can quickly surpass the price of a decent active sub that includes everything you need in a single box. In terms of day-to-day usability, once the sub is installed and the amp is dialed,